Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a quite possibly very rare yet seemingly common Friday episode. And today I have, if you're listening on the audio section, yes, it's been a common thing for a while. But right now, with me on my end of things, you might notice is somebody different. And who am I here with? And now to you, Jay.
Joe, hey, hi. Glad to be here.
Uh, for the sake of my audience, who am I speaking, please? With,
You
please.
are you are speaking to Jay Michael, and I
And
am a podcast producer. I am a ufologist. I'll have to tell you my story of how I got into UFOs and that sort of thing. But I'm also a documentary film producer.
uh, let's start, if you may. We can start with that. What documentaries have you done? I know you spoke about one pertaining to UFOs, but have you done more than that?
Yes, I have. If you visit my international movie database on International Movie Database, you can check that out. And I have a listing of like over 50 documentaries there. If you ask me a specific one, I probably will have to grasp at the title because I've done so many of them. But yeah, I've done a whole lot of them. Yeah. And it's
So,
usually on the subject of aliens, UFOs, ancient aliens, conspiracy theories, and Bigfoot. Those are the topics my executive producer hands me.
have you enjoyed researching those topics or working on those topics, or uh,
Absolutely.
I do apologize, folks. Normally, even with a person such as this, I know I should have asked Jay a little bit more in regards to what he's done so I can see what he's done and have more of a uh, more questions on hand, maybe watched one or two of his documentaries, or may have seen one or two of his documentaries in the past. That way I could have easily picked one or two up. But folks, if you're listening or watching, we have a lot of show ADHD and we tend to be forgetful and get busy at times. So please bear with us. Um, have you enjoyed you said you've talked about or filmed documentaries pertaining not just Bigfoot, but you said cryptids, right?
Cryptids,
Or should I
lots of
say,
them.
um, which has which has been your most favorite to do? I know these are a lot of similar stuff.
Well, my most favorite is the documentary that I did on my own sightings, which is about the Pascagoula, Mississippi UFO abduction with Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker. I was at the time I was 12 years old, and I was living in Ellisville, Mississippi, which is about 90 miles from the coast, playing with a football in the front yard. Bounced off into the yard, went and picked it up, and when I looked up in the sky, there was this huge orange ball of light that was floating across the sky from the north to the south. South, of course, being towards Pascagoula. And as it passed by, it was making the tops of the trees glow orange. And I looked up at this thing and I was terrified. I mean, I'm 12 years old. I was terrified. And it floated by. As it floated by, I remember thinking to myself, don't take me, don't take me, don't take me. At that age, I had no concept of alien abductions or anything like that. So why I would think it would take me, I don't know. But I remember thinking that in my mind as it floated on by, and it floated towards the south until the point where I was riveted, just frozen there in fear, until the point where it looked like a distant star. So it must have headed straight for the coast. And this was right after dusk. Um, it was along that time, at well after dusk, that Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker were abducted in Pascagoula by the UFO that they saw. They described a blue light. What I saw was an orange light, so I assume they can change colors, of their craft. But at any rate, they were abducted that night, and I didn't know anything about that. It just scared me. I went inside and I sat on the edge of my bed wondering what it was I had seen and trying to kind of process it. later on, over the weekend, I remember hearing the adults around me making jokes about the two guys in Pascagoula that claimed they got abducted by aliens. And I thought, wow, you know, when was that? Because Thursday night, October 11th, I had seen that orange light. So I became fascinated with the subject of UFOs. About a year later, Ralph and Judy Blum came out with a book called Beyond Earth Man's Contact with UFOs. And the whole story of Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker was in there, which I had not heard their version. I had just picked up little bits and pieces here and there. Didn't read newspapers. I was 12, I was a kid, you know. So it was then that I was like, oh my
I
God.
don't mean to interrupt, but I think at 12 years old, a lot of us were just, if we did pick up a paper, it was just for like the funny section, like the Garfield and Far Side type of ordeal. And beyond
Exactly.
that, there would have been very little or not too much
Hmm.
interest for us.
Yeah, I didn't watch the news on TV. I didn't, you know, the only thing that kind of interested me on TV was Watergate, but you know, I didn't really even keep up with that until later. But anyhow, at that time, you know, I thought, wow, you know, this was the same night that I saw mine. And years later, I got in touch with Charles Hickson. He was actually from Sandersville, which is above Ellisville, above Laurel, Ellisville, in that area. And actually ran into him once in a Walmart, and we talked and we communicated with each other about the sighting and such. And then years after that, I got the opportunity to talk to Calvin Parker, who had been silent through most of this. As Charlie was going out and doing conventions and meeting people and doing interviews and such, Calvin stayed behind. He didn't want anything to do with any of that. But later in life, he decided he would come out with his side of the story, which he did in a book by Philip Mantel. And I got in touch with him, and then that's when I produced my documentary called Alien Contact, the Pascagoula Incident. And I went back to Mississippi. I'm living in Waco, Texas now. Drove back to Mississippi, met with other people that also had seen it that night or seen a craft that night. And we all got together in a room and filmed it. And I put together this documentary which covers a lot of the different angles of it and some animation and all in it of it. And then Charlie himself, I mean, Calvin himself tells the story in his own words in the documentary. And I covered everything from where the police, the night that they were abducted, the sheriff put them in a room and didn't tell them that there was a audio recording being made. They had hidden a microphone in the room with them, and they fully expected that the two guys would start trying to get their story right, you know, and talking about, oh boy, we've got these guys fooled, you know. But it was the complete opposite. They broke down and were literally crying and talking to each other about what had happened to them. And he didn't expect that. You know, the sheriff was like, "Oh my gosh," you know, this to this day he would tell you that he believes, you know, that it actually happened to them because of that recording, because they had no idea they were being recorded. And the recording is in my documentary. You can listen to them in their own words back then. And since then, also, Calvin Parker has been hypnotized and brought out more details. And just a lot of information about that particular sighting has been occurring over the years. Philip's now got, I think, a fourth book on the subject, on the Pascagoula incident. Come and another one about to come out. So there's all this new information coming out about it. I was able to get a whole lot of us together who had seen something that night, and film us and put my documentary together, which came out in 2019. So I mean, even since then, more people have emerged that have seen
Now,
something. Hmm.
now I will say this. I it I know you probably, when I piped up to say, "Hey, would you like to be on my little rinky dink little drop in the bucket podcast?" You
There are
probably
no
were
drop
thought,
in the bucket podcasts. There are none. All good.
but that I might be, yeah, I'll put it like this because I grew up, I'm a Gen Xer, born in 75, raised, through the
Mhm.
80s. I remember I want to say the early 90s Fox T. It was on Fox. I forgot what it was called. The host would say, there's no mystery closed to an open mind, or something along those lines. But, and I try to be that. Yeah. Am I a skeptic? Yes, I am. But, I always claim to be an open-minded skeptic. Myself, I've always said I'm a firm believer of UFOs, alien life outside our own. I'd say the first time I saw something that can be described as a UFO. Now, mind you, when I saw it, it was like I might have been 5 years old,
Right.
maybe six. Um, And when you're 5 or 6, you think you know a lot, but you don't know a lot.
Hmm.
Um, I just remember I was living in Long Island at the time. I got up. I don't know why. I just got up, wasn't sleeping night, looked at my clock. It was about maybe between midnight and 1. And I just, what you could best describe, hey, thoughts, minds of a 5-year-old. It's midnight, 1 a.m. I never seen what midnight or 1 a.m. looks like.
Hmm.
I open up the curtain to my window and I'm looking out at a empty suburban street, but something told me to look up. And what I told my parents, and I've told many times since, it might have changed slightly due to age, but it looked like a bottom of your stereotypical saucer right above the tree line,
Hmm.
rotating maybe clockwise slowly and moving slowly overhead with lots of multicolored lights underneath.
Hmm.
And I went, oh, gee, that's neat. Closed the curtain, went back to bed, and I told my folks the next morning, I saw something I couldn't explain at like 2 a.m. Um, they probably thought in their minds, he probably got up at 2 a.m., opened up, saw a plane go across the sky, and, but to them, their credit, they kind of believed me because maybe in their thought process, to him, he doesn't know what a plane at night looks like. So, yes, it's a UFO.
Right.
So in essence, he's correct. And by other definition, if you see a plane in the distance and you
Hmm.
can't make it out, it is by that default definition a UFO.
Right.
Um,
Well,
but I got
this is one
yeah,
of the
go ahead.
reasons why I don't like to call them unidentified flying objects because, like you said, anything in the sky is unidentified. You don't know what it is. That's it.
Right,
I don't know what it was. I refer to them as unverified flying objects because unverified is a call to action. It means you need to verify this. You need to determine what it is you're seeing, verify what in fact it is. And so unverified flying objects would be something that needs that verification. Whereas unidentified, you can walk off and leave it and say, well, I don't know what it was. Or I think it was an alien spaceship, but that doesn't mean that's what it is. So
you're right,
verify it. Right.
right,
But you were
and
talking about how you're skeptical. I'm skeptical. Ever
right,
since 1973, October 11th, 73, when I saw that orange light, every 2 years, I have seen an unverified flying object or an unidentified flying object. Every 2 years, it's almost like clockwork. And some of them over the years, if unless someone says something and I go, oh yeah, I remember that one now. Yeah, I forget them. It's easy to forget because I've seen so many of them. But I find that when I look at them more skeptically than I would if, say, you or someone tells me I saw a flying saucer or I saw a UFO. I have no reason to disbelieve you. So yeah, you did. But when I look at my own sightings, I am very skeptical. I try to rule out every possible thing it could possibly have been, and then whatever's left over, well, maybe that's what it is. I still don't necessarily say they're alien, even though I've seen a whole bunch of them. I don't know what they are. I know what they're not. They're not airplanes. They're not balloons. They're not drones. They're, at least the ones I've seen through my life, because drones didn't exist, you know. They're not high altitude balloons. They may be secret government projects. I don't know that.
Right.
But it could be anything, you know. It could be from anywhere, and I don't rule out that they could be time travelers or
Right.
interdimensional or coming through wormholes or something like that. I mean, I don't know. I want to know. I'm as skeptical as anyone else. I want
Right.
to know like everyone else wants to know.
Now, I'll say this: the clearest you might remember it as roughly as much as I do. Granted, the story, the reason why it intrigued me is that what you were talking about, the Mississippi case. But growing up, I remember reading the and going into like communion, fire in the sky, Betty and Barney Hill, those encounters in my, I might have read more at, the various books I was able to find as a young lad, very young lad. But in my teenage years or mid to late teenage years, you might remember the instances in Jupiter or say from Jupiter, Florida, the gentleman that took photos off the coast of Jupiter, Florida, of UFOs. And I remember I was also living in Florida that time, and my father used to be outside while he was smoking a cigarette. I just remember him uh, opening the door, yelling at me to come out. I need to see this. And I walk out, and there's that same type of UFO right over, I mean, clear as day.
Mm,
And this is like 93, maybe 90, between 92 and 94. It
right.
was like a summer night. And I was like, dude, but looking back at it now, I was like, what if it was granted, you wouldn't have a projection, but it was, that what if it was a projection? Now looking back, what if it was like a projection on a cloud or a treetop, but it wasn't really a cloud or
Mhm.
a something like that? And the other thing that I remember clearly is that I used to be up at like 6 o'clock to get the bus for school during that time, and I see a green fireball in the sky go from one side to the other. And
Mhm.
I just chalked it up to, it's 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm waiting on the bus. Ignore it. It's whatever. And it
Right.
wasn't until I got on the bus and the person that was on the stop before me was like, "Did you all see that thing that happened and go across the
Mhm.
sky?" I'm like, I thought it was just me. And but it's, you hear reports of like fireballs that could be a meteor burning up
Right.
or just going across it, but it looked the size of a small cereal bowl in the sky, sort of given
Wow.
huge.
Mm.
But it was just like there 1 second, gone in another.
Right.
Uh, but I've always been fascinated by UFOs. I've always,
Mhm.
nowadays, with the advent of, you and I know, back in the even up into the mid 90s, seeing those photos, seeing evidence, yeah, the evidence could have been fake, but there was always that 50-50 chance. But nowadays, with modern technology, cell phones in everybody's
Right.
pocket, and able to fake stuff, that stuff that's coming out more and more often is still,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, it looks CGI, so therefore it could be CGI, but
Well, this is why for me, I mean, the things that I've seen since I was 12, there was no CGI. There was no film of it.
right,
I saw it myself. But I mean, things like that it was a lot harder to fake photos. Billy Meyer put a bunch of fakes out, but he was very good at doing it. And so, you know, when you look at old photos like that, there's a certain, you have to ask, well, who took the photo and how good were they with photography? Could they have faked something? Today, it's very easy. I would venture to say that 99% of anything you see on social media that's supposed to be a UFO is most likely CGI. It's most likely
right,
fake. I mean, there's some good stuff out there that's real, But you'll see all these little reels and things on Instagram or Facebook that's supposed to be alien. And I can, as a documentary film producer and working with digital video all the time, I literally can look at some of this stuff and go, "Yep, that's fake. Yep, that's fake." You know, because there's certain little telltale signs that you can tell it's just a little too blended in too well or something like that.
Uh,
But
I
yeah,
for me, it's like I'm not that good, but
oh,
nor am I in the like the film community, but I know a little bit about special effects and all that, and I could just give it a 1-2 glance. Like, yeah, that's CGI, and I go into the comments. It's like, oh, this is so like you could tell it's CGI. It's not even
exactly.
good
Yeah.
CGI at that.
Really.
And
Or you see there's like 3 or 4 Air Force jets and this fleet of flying saucers is chasing them across the sky and you're like, if that happened, NBC would be on it immediately. You know, I mean,
right,
it would be all over the news that wow, this, kid filmed this with his uh,
yeah,
cell
and
phone, you know?
or if not, it'll be if you want to put on a tinfoil hat and say, yeah, the media is going to be covering stuff up. It's we're in an age of I'm not going to use X. It's an age of Twitter, Instagram,
Exactly.
TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook.
And
It would
people
be,
get clicks off this stuff. If they can
and the
get
thing would
it's
be,
clickbait. If they can get
it
you to
would be
click on it,
everywhere.
yeah,
You'd if you're not, you'd see it one way or another through either the folks I'm subscribed like Secure Team 10 is one of the bigger UFO folks on YouTube. Either he would be blowing it up, or a lot of the skeptics would be blowing it up, trying to debunk it. Somebody would be talking about
exactly.
it.
Right.
And
And the
now,
lack of that talk about it also is telling because it's kind of like, oh well, this is one of 100 UFO images you're going to see today on Facebook or on Instagram. That's totally fake because no one's looking at it and going, ooh. And here's my first question when something like that comes up. My first question is, did you actually see it in person? Is there anybody that you can point out that said, I saw this in person? And most of the time you get crickets, because nobody actually saw it. It was something they saw on camera, on Facebook or whatever. So try to find people who actually saw it in person. Even the cameraman who says he filmed it, try to hunt him down, and find out who filmed this. And if you can't do that, the odds are it's probably fake.
right. Uh, with me, it's I'd say since those days of those type of stories of UFOs, I went down that rabbit hole every year. It's like, oh, I want
Mhm.
to, Bigfoot, cryptids have always fascinated me. So you could say the gateway drug for me was UFOs. I went down that
Right.
route. And it's not a dangerous route if you have that skeptic mind a little bit. It's always fun to hear those tales and people's experiences about it. And speaking with folks like yourself that are a little bit skeptical and
Mhm.
that dive into it and say, "Oh no, that's just somebody in a bear costume," or it's just metal plates welded together and somebody flung it in the sky or hanging it with a wire.
Yeah.
Um, but it's why I've enjoyed at times like Coast to Coast AM, listening to them in the Friday night open lines. Yes, some of it is complete. I've always said some of it's got to be complete bull crap, but still it's entertaining as hell.
That's it.
Uh,
That's the key right there. It's entertainment. And
right.
in fact, 90% of these shows you see on television is entertainment. Ancient aliens and UFO files and things like that. These are designed to sell advertising and to put them on television and to gain an audience. They are entertainment. So you have to be a little skeptical. You have to, in your mind, divide what is entertainment and what is being sent to me as factual, newsworthy journalistic information, and separate those two, because it's, they do a lot of CGI in these shows too. They have to do reenactments. I do them. I do reenactments, and we have to show what it is we're talking about. When I write a script for a documentary, I try to be as factual as possible, but at the same time, I have to keep in mind that I got to capture an audience with this. And if I throw a whole lot of science into it, the audience is going to sit back and go, "Oh, this is boring. I don't want to hear a bunch of scientific stuff. I want to see UFOs and aliens." So you got to splash the entertainment in there.
Right.
At the same time, try to make sure your script is as factual as possible. That's what I
Uh,
try to do. Some of these TV shows, I'm not going to name names, but some of them grasp for very big straws. They're not factual. He said, she said that they saw this thing. Okay, go talk to him instead of they.
right. That's why he's been around for, I'd say, a couple of years, but I started watching him maybe about a year or two ago. The YouTuber is the channel is called the Y Files, and
Mhm.
he does a lot of similar content to, I wouldn't say similar, but similar in regards to UFOs, paranormal, the unexplained, uh, similar to Coast, like, but he'll say, all right, this is a story about let's say UFO abductions. He'll cover into the usual Betty and Barney Hill, the
Right.
fire in the sky, but he'll, at the closer end, he said, all right, this is where the story breaks down, or where this person might, the little bit of the skepticism comes out. It's like, this is
Right.
where he changes his story, or they didn't,
And that's
this
a good
evidence.
thing.
Yeah,
That's a
and it's
good thing that
all,
they do that. Mhm.
and he had to keep things entertaining and humor, like you said, you have to have that little bit of entertainment to
Right.
keep the folks
Right.
watching. And he has a little bit of a if you want, a CGI sidekick called Hecklefish that
Mhm.
will make puns, heckle,
Yeah.
that sort of thing, just to keep the fans interesting. And that's why people are watching him, because he's doing that sort of thing. It's like, yes, this is a fun story, but I couldn't really find
Right.
either
And
way.
and it's not to say anything negative against the people who do these shows.
Right.
The people who are in the shows, the authors, the researchers and all. They're legitimate authors and researchers. They're trying to, they're writing books and such, but they're trying to be as factual as possible. But when you go and you're on a network television show, it's often scripted, and they basically tell you what to say because they want you to say that fantastic thing that they can now segue into something that's entertaining. And so you're riding a very thin fence on both sides. You want to be factual, you want to be a good researcher, you want to do your due diligence to the subject, and you want to do your research, but at the same time you're on a national television show or an international television show, and they're expecting ratings, and they expect you to say this or that, or bring up a point or something that they can then take and run with. So the researchers themselves that do research into this, they're doing the best they can, but at the
I
same
don't, I
time,
don't
they have to have funding, they
I,
have to have funding.
Jay, I don't mean to interrupt you, but do you think that can ruin, if you have, let's say you have somebody that is credible, they
Hmm.
saw it, it's truth. Let's say it is that 1 in 100, or that one, let's say 1 in 100. Let's go with that for the basic math. It's an actual encounter, so forth and so on.
Hmm.
Um, but because of that, do you think it, down the line, it could actually discredit them? Because uh,
Absolutely.
whether it be and not so much ancient aliens or something like that, they just
Yeah.
blow it up. I'd say it's like, I'm not discrediting someone like the late Art Bell or George Norrie or anything like that. I'll agree with a lot of folks out there that Art Bell knew how to do that story. If he like one person said, if Art knew the story was just bogus, but he'd play into the story to keep it more entertaining. And that's why a lot of people loved him when he was alive. He knew how to keep the story entertainment and
Hmm.
going. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you need
Right.
junk food for the brain to uh, keep the brain going with all the good stuff for the brain. But
Right.
in a way, I'm agreeing with you there, and I'm asking you, it's like, yes, is that possibility that uh, that a ABC, Discovery, whomever can ruin that story and in essence have that person change their story, which in turn can discredit them.
Absolutely. And a lot of researchers, UFO researchers, have gone down that path to the point where they became uncredible because they appeared so many times on shows like this. The other aspect of that is that also the media can run a story in the ground. They can cover it so many times, so often that people get sick of it. And they're like, there may be definite truth within that story, but people reach a point where, "Oh, they're doing that story again. I want to hear something new. And so it can also, the agency itself, the network itself, can lose credibility by who they have on, or what they say, or things like that. Yeah, that can happen all the time. And I agree with you. That's true. It happens.
I'll also go into this. If I don't know if you'll agree with me or not, there are the occasional aspects where the I don't want to say mainstream media, but there's been times where I've seen it could be let's take 2020 for example. They'll run that rare fluff piece of man's granted, I'm doing it simplistic. Person sees UFO and they
Hmm.
treat it as a joke.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I that to me that doesn't sit right. I'm like, well,
Right.
there are people that they seem again like George Norrie or about Coast to Coast that yes, it could be fake and but they're treating it more serious than 2020 is.
Right.
Whereas like one is X-Files, we're ready to believe you, or Ghostbusters, we're ready to believe you,
Right.
versus look at this joke of a person that, saw a UFO, even though he has 3 doctorates. He's the mayor of
Hmm.
small town USA, and he
Hmm.
has nothing to lose by seeing, coming out with this information.
Well, early on, and that's the way it always was. I mean, anytime they reported on UFOs, it was tongue in cheek. It was like, oh, yeah, somebody saw a flying saucer and ha ha hee hee. Now let's go to the story. So they've already set you up to disbelieve it in the beginning. Now it's almost like maybe they're trying to overcompensate, and on some networks they're trying to, well, let's treat this seriously. And but another thing with that is that the government now is seriously looking into it and spending money. The Pentagon spending money with programs like ATIP and the AARO, and organizations that are seriously looking at what these things may be. And there's some interesting footage coming out in the last few years that was shot by Air Force pilots and shot by drones and such. That so now the news, it's almost like they're like, well, what are we supposed to do with this? Are we supposed to laugh at it? Are we supposed to take it seriously? So I think a lot of it also is confusion on the part of the networks. They don't really know how to treat this. Because it is anomalous. It is weird, that people see these things, and we are so grounded to believe that everything has to fit into a black and white category, and not everything does. So the other thing also is that it's like today we have a lot more people who don't want to hear the science. They don't want to hear the facts. They don't believe the facts sometimes when they're presented. They want to jump the gun, run all the way out there and declare it, well, it's aliens, or aliens do that, or it's people from outer space, or it's ghosts or supernatural or something like that. When in fact, now is the time that, since we do have the government's ear on this, We need to be listening to what's coming out from scientists and what they are saying and paying closer attention to it through the lens of factual and scientific rather than I want to believe it's aliens, therefore it's aliens. You know what I mean?
Right, right. I see that with a lot of because I'm into the paranormal and the supernatural and the weird and wild of nature that it is, and a lot of the stuff that comes through my feed, whether on TikTok, YouTube, whatever. It's hearing the folks like what you said on one side. No, it's like no matter what it is, it's X, Y, and Z. It's like yes, and there's scientific evidence. Let's say I'm going to bring out that community, like the flat earthers. It's like, wait a minute, we have all this scientific evidence that says otherwise, but you're saying it's CGI. There's too many, there is too much scientific evidence. What you're saying, you're deluding yourself. It's just plain stupidity.
Exactly.
And it's like,
Well,
it's like, go ahead.
people have this attitude now that I don't want to hear your opinion. I want to hear my opinion come out of your mouth. They
Right,
want to be validated. They want rather than hear what something truly actually is that's been scientifically proven, they want to hear you say that it's what they believe that it is. And therefore that's it. You just validated what they already believed, so they're good with it. They'll walk away. They're okay. But when you do present factual information and data to someone, their eyes gloss over and they're like, well, I don't think that's what it is. I think it's this. And they don't care. That's the problem. They don't care. They only want their own beliefs validated. And so a lot of times when you have a lot of data, a lot of information, a fully researched incident of a UFO or UFOs or a landing or something, it's fully and completely documented with factual information, people will still revert back to, well, I believe that it was space aliens. And we need to get back to trusting science. The problem today is people don't trust science. Science isn't wrong. Science may change. They may change their opinion on something when they are presented with new information and new data, but they're not wrong. And if science is telling you one thing and you want to believe something else and you're ignorant to just anything else out there because it interferes with your belief, then you're the one with the problem, not science. Science is science. It is what it is. It is facts. It is intelligent understanding of what something is. Later on, more science may come along that then says, oh, okay, well, we were wrong. Now we know it's this. But they weren't necessarily wrong. They knew what they knew with the data they had at the time. And science is always evolving. Science is always
right,
changing. Exactly. So you need to be able to adapt with it rather than just fall back on, well, I believe it's leprechauns, so it's leprechauns. Yeah.
right. And that
No.
it's one of the things that when I speak to folks in the Bigfoot community. I know a few. I won't say personally, but I know a few folks in there, and they're always debunking stuff. And it's like, yeah, this could be just a bear walking through the thick part of the woods, and therefore that's why it looks like a
Right.
Bigfoot. And they're like, yes, and they've when I proposed the question in regards to it, they because one of the points I bring up with Bigfoot is that and cryptids. The only reason why I'm bringing this because you said you've done work with cryptids. Is no problem. Sorry for the pause or break and everything, folks. Um, old person problems, both sides. Or say nature called. It wasn't. Or if you want,
Nature didn't
al-
call, nature yelled.
or if you want, folks, aliens. And I say that with humor. Um, but what they were saying is like, yeah, there's with cryptids you have to look 100 years ago, 100 maybe 150 tops.
Right.
Pandas were considered cryptids. No one
exactly.
knew that they existed. There were a lot of things that were considered cryptids until science found them.
Gorillas were
And
cryptids.
yeah, gorillas, pandas, probably a multiple of other animals that were considered legendary were cryptids. And one of the issues that some folks may have in the Bigfoot community is like, oh, we found hairs. Are some of those hairs bears? Yeah, I'll say yes. But there could be that chance of they could be, if you want to say, if you're one of the believers, yeah, there could be that one person that this is a Bigfoot hair. I'm going to replace it with a bear hair so nobody notices it. And eventually it's all bear hair and where the original samples go.
Right.
And that could be an issue. And one of the things that a lot of the Bigfoot hunters that I spoke to and the skeptics say in a lot of the places in like Oregon, Washington, there's nobody there for hundreds of years, and those remains, if these big feet, if you will, uh, pass away, they could just be gone instantaneously, and you can walk right by the remains and not notice it, not see it. So there's a lot of things and a lot of good questions being asked, and it just takes one to be found or one that's
Right.
legit.
Right.
And there's been many over the years like, oh, Bigfoot has been found, we've got a body, yet it's
Oh, I remember the
like
2008
hoax.
case. The
I think
2008
that's
case where
I think that's what I'm talking about. Yeah.
they had one in a freezer and CNN showed up and it would be everybody, all of us. I mean, we were
Yeah.
just waiting by the TV and the computers and all waiting for the next photo to drop or whatever. And then a guy named Steve Coles went there and he was the one that really broke the case open that it was just a mask in a freezer, you know, and but the thing about that I've noticed in the Bigfoot community is when someone discovers a hoax, they're very, very quick to spread around that, oh yeah, this was a hoax. There's nothing to it. There's nothing to this particular incident. And it becomes accepted that, oh yeah, we discovered it's a hoax, so it's a hoax, and we don't talk about it much anymore, other than if they're talking about hoaxes.
I
But
I've
the
also noticed
UFO
that.
community doesn't necessarily do that.
Right. I've also noticed in the Bigfoot community, there's a seemingly a lot of drama in regards to it, a lot of back and forth drama. I know on my side, one of the things I tend to do for my show is I cover events. I love covering events, conventions, and so forth and so on. I covered, I want to say it was like maybe 2018, 2019. I went down to in Virginia, southern part of Virginia. They someone I knew was doing a Bigfoot convention down there. He had the hotel ballroom, and they he was like, I'd ask the presenters doing the panels, like, hey, is it all right if I record your panel? You get all the credit, so forth and so on. It's all you. It's your content. Whatever links you have, um, I'll be more than happy to share those links out. But it's all your stuff.
Hmm.
And a lot of them were like, out of like the 5 or 6 presenters that were there that day that said that we spoke to, all of them but 2 said yes. One said no to me recording his panel, but yes to an interview. So it was like, okay, trade off, fine.
Right.
I could work with that. That's respectful. I get that, no problem.
Hmm.
The other group that said no, and I'll put it like this: no harm, no foul to them. It was their right to say no. But I kind of, when I was leaving, I laughed at my buddy who helped me out. It was a bunch of female Bigfoot hunters, and I really wanted to get their panel. That way I have a female perspective on that
Right.
aspect and document them. And they said no. Well, first they said no, but check it. We have to talk with the rest of the group. Come back in about an hour or so. My buddy went back about hour and a half later. They said, well, we said okay, but maybe you could record maybe about 15 minutes of it. And when he came back to me, I'm like, what's the point of us recording 15 minutes of it? There's no point. And when they finally came up, we were deciding to close up. Anyway, they were coming up, and they spent the majority of their time saying, because a lot of the people in the audience were just talking amongst themselves. There was a lot of people chatting in volume, even though they had microphones and speakers. They were complaining that they were not being heard. And that's when I turned to my buddy and whispered to him, like, hey, if they just said yes, they could have just went all about their presentation. And all
Mhm.
they said, what I had said during their panel is, hey, if you can't hear us, the folks standing over there recording us would be more than happy to give you links to their show so you could hear what we're saying.
Right.
And he was like, you got a point. But they said no. We're going to respect their decision that they said no.
Right.
And we just kind of went like this and wandered off. But I'm happy to do it. I have no ill will with that person, and if I had a way to get to one of his events again, I would do that. I'd be more than happy to do it both days if he did it both days, because he's very honest and like, hey, I'm more than happy to talk with you guys and have my guys. You're being welcoming. You're asking
Mhm.
questions. You want to get their side. You're documenting their stuff,
Right.
either with the video or at least audio, interviewing them, speaking to them what they found, getting their stories. That's the whole point.
Well,
That's
part of that is probably because they don't know what you're going to do with it. And I think a lot of people are afraid, oh, you're going to take this and go make a comedy out of it or something. You're going to go and misrepresent us with this. So I don't want to give you permission to do it because, I don't know what you're going to do with it. But the other side of that is that this is promotion for your group. Um, yeah, you might have to get an agreement that they're not going to do something bad with your footage, but they need to do that. They need to let people like you document what they're saying and what they're doing, just like you need documented evidence and you need a chain of evidence of where you found a footprint in the woods or some hair or something like that. You need as much documentation of everything you're doing as possible. And that I say to anyone doing Bigfoot research, UFO research, whatever, document everything from the moment you get out of the truck to the moment you get back in it. You should be filming. You really should be, because that film is an unbiased person with you that's following you around in the woods. And if you do discover something, if you do find some very interesting evidence, you have a chain of a command, a chain of events of exactly how you found it through that video. So you should film everything that you do. And if you're giving a presentation, you should let people film it, because that's that's proof you did it, for one thing. And it's also, in the event that you did say something that's erroneous or not true, let them call you on it so you can explain it. Otherwise, it's just what you said, and people will walk away and they'll act like, oh, well, I heard her say this or that, and I know that's not true. Well, she has no way of refuting it.
that's one of the things. Even though my show is strictly a geek podcast or a
Hmm.
geek show, and one of the things that I do in regards to, the events, whether it would be a Paracon, a Bigfoot convention, or a pop culture convention, that I'm able to get a panel or anything with consent, is that, and some people have asked me, it's like, why? I said, well, it's good promotion for the people doing this. Meaning,
Right.
if it's a Paracon, if it's a pop culture, it's good promotion for them, because they could say that, look, this is who we've had here. This is the discussion that they've done. It's
Hmm.
good promotion for you, because you can get that stuff out and
Hmm.
have it on your thing. I'm not going to treat you as a joke. It's going to be serious. I want to do it to invoke conversation.
Right.
If my audience thinks that you are a joke, that's on my audience. I want you to talk about this. I want you uh to talk about what you're talking about. And the only time I would yell at someone, let's say if you were giving a presentation, is
Hmm.
uh, the one Paracon I did and was getting panels, it seemed like they weren't talking into the mic.
Right.
They were talking to folks in the first row. And my process is like, dude, you don't talk to the first row. I don't care if you're in a big auditorium and there's 5 people there. Talk to the people in the back. Use that microphone. Use every tool there. Don't talk to the people in front. Talk to the people in the back, because that's why you're here. If you're talking to the people in front, anybody that's coming in the back is not going to hear you. They're going to turn around and walk out,
Right.
and that's not good.
Hmm.
You're there to talk about what you're talking about. And that, when I was recording that Paracon, I was like maybe a year or two into things. I was
Hmm.
just happy to record the event and be there to promote my show. And it was that aspect of things. And
Right.
bringing audio, because it was near a train station. Uh, this is one of my favorite pieces. I tell everybody. I just set the microphone up and just recorded the whole day,
Hmm.
all the panels the whole day, and trains were going by. And there was one part of the train that went by you as a podcaster, no, you get to see audio as well.
Right.
And that's the beauty of things. When you're doing that type of stuff, you get to see audios. People who don't do podcasts don't understand. They're like, how can you see audio? Well, we deal with audio software, so we see audio. And seeing an odd spike that's different from the rest of it, you focus in on that. And
Right.
that's what I focused in on. And like, I know this is a train going by, but this section is a little bit different than everything else. What's going on? And what it sounded like was somebody, I knew it was empty most of the day, but what it sounded like was somebody whispering into the mic going, "It's a train," as it was going by. And I was like, if that's an honest to God EVP of some unknown spirit whispering into the mic going, "It's a train," it would be so cool. But that's what it sounded like.
Uh,
And I played it to some of the investigators there. They're like, they kind of dismissed it to it's the brakes of the train, cars going by. I'm like, I live right near train tracks. I know what brakes sound like.
uh,
That doesn't sound like brakes. It sounded like somebody was whispering in the mic. It's a train. But I get where they're coming from. They have to be that skeptical. And
right.
it's that back and forth.
Right.
And it some of the other folks that deal with paranormal investigation are like, wow, that is cool that you've got something, that you heard something. And it
Uh-huh.
wasn't like, how dare you, they're not putting people down that might have gotten something. And
Right.
like, there you go, you've gotten an EVP that you think you heard something. And they're like, what did you do when you clipped that out? I said, well, me being a podcaster, when I was doing the event review, I'm like, all right, here's a EVP I think I caught. Listen to it, play it back, and tell me what you heard.
Right.
Did you hear it's a train, or did you hear just the
Right.
brakes from the train?
Uh,
That way, if I got any engagement from it, people could comment either on our Facebook or on, whatever, email us and tell us that I didn't get anything, but it was me trying to increase engagement.
right.
So yeah,
Well,
I think the same thing goes with you too, in
yeah.
some aspects.
I have a talk coming up at East Texas Paracon on April 19th and 20th. And that's going to be up around Jefferson, Texas, Manola, Texas, in that area. You can look up East Texas Paracon to find out the exact location. I don't have the address right here. But when I do a talk, if someone wants to come in and film me or audio record me or anything like that, I don't care. I mean, go ahead, that's another ear that's listening, or it might represent 20 more ears that's hearing me talk that's not in the room, because it's being recorded so somebody could play that recording for somebody. I don't normally care if they record me. I appreciate it when someone, walks up and asks permission to do it. I'm sure, go ahead. At least they asked. They didn't just, secretly record it in the background and then go do something with it. It's nice that you ask. But yeah, you were talking about catching that audio on your audio recording from an event. Years ago, I was working on a documentary on the history of Ellisville, Mississippi, which is where I grew up. Did you see the movie The Free State of Jones with Matthew McConaughey? There was
No, no. Now I probably want to look it up and see
okay.
see
Well,
if it's available somewhere.
there was a movie done about Ellisville, and it was about Newt Knight, and we seceded from the Union during the Civil War because we didn't want to have anything to do with the Civil War. Newt didn't want to fight the rich man's fight, and so basically, our county, all of the county said, "The heck with you guys, we're not going to fight your fight for you." So we tried to secede. And there's a whole story around it and everything. But anyway, Newt shot a guy, a major, in a home in Ellisville, Mississippi. It's called the Decent Home, and it's known for haunted. It's known for being haunted. And there are paranormal researchers trying to get into that place back then. They really wanted to. I was one of three videographers that was allowed to go into the home and film. One was Walt Jackson from a television station in Jackson, another historical filmmaker, and then I was allowed as one of three people that had ever been allowed to film in the place. So I go in there and I set up my tripod, I set up my camera, and I've got the camera aimed at the spot next to the fireplace where he shot him in the heart. And I pan my camera around. And as I panned my camera around, this red light appeared right where his heart would be, standing next to the fireplace. And I thought, well, that's some kind of weird reflection. I need to reshoot this. So I turned the camera around, I panned back around, and as I pan around, that light's there. And I could never get the light to go away. And I kept looking at, well, is it the tally light on my? I was having to shoot through a window, and I thought, well, it could be the red tally light on my camera that's reflecting on the window and creating a spot there. So I covered it up with black tape, pan back around, and there's that light again. And I'm looking at it going like, this is so weird, that light. Where's it coming from? I looked around the room. I looked for any kind of security system that might be shooting an infrared beam, anything. I ruled out every possibility of where that light's coming from. But every time I'd pan the camera around, there it was. I even, looking at it when I got home, I played the tapes back and all. Back then, everything was on tape. And I played the tapes back, looking at it and going, there's got to be some source for this red light. So I went back the next day, set back up, still using my permission to film there, tried to film, and the red light's gone. It's not there. It's not there at all. I got all the shots I needed because that red light was gone. And it's weird how you said, like, you picked up an EVP. Well, I wonder to this day, was I seeing something akin to filming a ghost? I didn't see it with the naked eye. I could only see it in the camera. And that red light would have literally been right where his heart was, where he was shot by Newt Knight. And so, catching things like that, just kind of mysteriously or just not expecting it, I think it happens because it's happened to me. It's happened to you. Sometimes when you least expect it and you're out there recording an area, you'll catch some kind of paranormal activity that you weren't expecting. And part of it may be because you weren't trying to get it. You just got it.
Right. And as we were saying, being that skeptic, you want it. It could be anything, that weird noise in the woods. You could say it's a skinwalker, it's a Bigfoot, it's X, Y, and Z. It could be just an animal you've never heard before. Not everybody knows what a deer screaming sounds like.
Right.
Yet, for example, and therefore they hear, oh my God, I just heard a skinwalker. You could probably just heard a deer,
I
screaming, or you could, or I heard something walking in the woods, and I'd be like, dude, I've heard possums sound like deer before, and all it
Mhm.
is, it's like, and they're like, what do you mean? It's like, listen, I used to live in Pennsylvania, uh, sit out on the deck, a nice summer evening. I hear what would be a deer going from one side of the property to the other side, and when whatever it is comes into a clearing or crosses a driveway, it's a possum. And I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Really, bro? It's a possum. All that noise. I'm waiting for like a 10-point buck. It's a possum. You
Yeah.
son of a, yeah, but
Uh-huh. I
it's
can't
like,
I can't tell you how many times people have said, I got a recording of Bigfoot, and they'll play it, and I'm going, that's an owl. I've heard owls do that. It's an owl. No, it's not, it's Bigfoot. No, it's an owl. Owls make that sound. No, owls don't make that sound. Yes, they do. I grew up in the country. I know what owls sound like. So yeah, I know what you're talking about. It
yeah,
can be it could be anything.
don't talk to me about owls. One almost
Yeah.
gave me a heart attack last year. Basically, I mean that in the kindest way because me being here in West Virginia Panhandle, uh, they're barn owls, depending on how you want to pronounce it. I hear an owl in the back and like near my home. It sounded like maybe about 100, 200 feet away. I'm like, oh, the resident barred owl is back. How wonderful to hear the owls return. And next thing I know, it's taking off from a branch, hooted and taking off like right. I'm like, you mother, don't do that, man. Dude, I'm happy that you're here, but geez, did you have to give a brother a heart attack?
Exactly.
No. And
And they
but
swoop away silently. Have you ever
right.
been outside and just the shadow of one went by and you're like, oh my God, what? Oh, it's Owl. Oh, I thought there was like a giant thunderbird coming to get me, It's an owl.
Wildlife is such a fun and
Yes.
beautiful thing. When you see wildlife, and I have a bunch of wonderful fluffs or floofs that come by my house all the time, and I'm grateful that they're like, what do you mean floops? Oh, well, you got the standard stinky floof, which is skunk, uh, angry floof, which is an opossum. You got your trash pandas. You got your camphonated floofs, which are your squirrels. So that type of wildlife when it comes by is always a pleasure. Like, hi, how you doing?
Yeah.
Don't worry, I'm not gonna bug you. If anything, I might pick you up and we'll go for soft tacos later. But
There you go.
but it's
Yeah,
always fun
not
to sit
every
out.
not everything is Bigfoot, not everything is
Right.
UFO. You have to in this. You have to put your skepticals on. You got to keep them on all the time. And when you do come across something that's really intriguing, a story or someone has video or audio or something, and you're sitting there in your brain, you're trying to rule out every possible thing that it could be. And the more you're thinking about it, you're like, okay, it's not an owl, it's not this, it's not that, it's not an airplane, it's not a balloon, it's not. You reach that ultimate conclusion where, they say that if you rule out everything that it could be, whatever's left over must be the truth. And so, you finally you sit there and you say, well, I have skeptically ruled out every other thing it could be. So I'm left with it's either extraterrestrial or it's either a cryptid or, depending on what the subject is, or, and this is the thing that people forget how to do. They really forget how to do this. Say, I don't know what it is. Rarely will anyone say, I don't know what it is. They have to pigeonhole it into a category. Well, it's Bigfoot then. If you ruled out that it wasn't orangutan or Bigfoot or a gorilla or blah, 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 then it's got to be Bigfoot. No, it doesn't have to be Bigfoot. Well, if you ruled out it's a balloon and you've ruled out it's an airplane and a drone, then it's got to be an alien UFO. No, it doesn't. There's nothing in the world wrong with saying, I don't know. I don't know what it was. Because if you don't really know what it is, if it's unverified, unidentified, unverified, you don't know what it is. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. You don't have to force it into a category. And this is what I have found the hardest thing for people to do is to admit, I don't know what it was. And it's the easiest thing to do. You don't have to force it into anything. Just say, I don't know what it was.
Now, we've been going on for about an hour. So if you want to cut things, if you want to go more, we'll go more. But if you want to end things now, we can do that. Do you want to end things now, or
Let's go a
on
few
that
more
note?
minutes.
Okay, we could do about that.
Do another 10
I,
minutes.
I let's go about another 10 minutes or so. I just wanted to make sure with you because I didn't want to state
I'm
your way.
enjoying the conversation.
So,
I'm enjoying
so
this. So, yeah.
like I said, ghosts. It's been. Let me put it like this.
Have you ever seen a ghost?
Uh, personally, no. I had the EVP before. Uh, I've been I've been touched before. I've been touched, meaning I was asleep, I was on my side. Um, where I'm recording now is pretty much where I sleep. I'm sitting on my bed right now. And I was asleep. I've had that aspect. I'm I didn't realize where my arm was, and I'm scratching my head. I'm like, somebody's scratching my head. I don't know who it is, and I'm realizing it's my arm, my own hand doing it. But that's one thing. But I knew where my hands were,
Uh-huh.
and it felt like somebody put their hand, like somebody, like a lover would put their
Yeah.
hand across their chest. That's what it felt like. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm on a twin bed here. I'm not, I'm the only person in this house.
Right.
Who the hell's doing that? I've had clear as day. That's just me. No other people listening, no other people around. Stuff I could not explain. The one thing I had that had other people there was my friend. If he watches this, he hates me every time I repeat this story. It was when I was living in maybe a few miles from here. It was a split level ranch. Um, I invited him, his girl, now his wife, same person, to go help me take inventory of what I had, and that way I knew what to add to the house. We're going through an old barrel of toys, and one things I heard was somebody clear as day, like you and I talking, say hello, and I was like, he looked at me and was like, we all looked at each other like, is somebody else in the house? And he's like, yeah, asked me. He's like, dude, is the front door locked or closed? Did you lock that? And I said, hold on a second. Let me check. I went up, checked the front door, and it was locked. The house alarm was on. No one else was in the house. And granted, we're in a garage, but where we heard it was not behind us.
Uh-huh.
It was, I mean, behind us where the garage door was. This was on the other side of a wall and upstairs, like where the front door was.
Uh-huh.
And the other thing, now we went back to going through that old toy bin, and next thing we hear is a little girl's voice coming from the same direction, saying, clear as day, can I play?
Wow.
Now my neighbors had two girls, but they were in their late teens, not like 5 years old. And this was coming from inside the house, roughly the same location. And my buddy was like, no, we did not just hear that. That was
You both heard it at the same time.
all three of us heard it at the same time.
Wow.
This was in a span of maybe 10 minutes, not even.
Wow.
It was in not, somebody could have said it was in the front of the house. I'm like, no, there were not just the main house wall that they would had to have shouted through. There was another wall between us and that outer wall, and a span of maybe about 10, 15 feet before anybody would been able. And the way we were talking was, yeah, normal tone, but no one from maybe 20 feet away could have heard us talking about toys in a barrel or anything like that. No one.
Yeah.
And we didn't hear anybody roll up or drive up or park or come out of the neighbor's house. Would have been 100 feet behind us past a closed garage door. We would have known. And so is it something that's unexplained? Yes. Is it
Wow.
creepy as hell? Yes.
Yes.
Um, I've told people where my 9 to 5 is right now, that establishment is kind of haunted because it's a, I'll put it like this, it's a restaurant type of ordeal, mom and pop restaurant. There were 3 of us in the building. We were all in the main section because nobody was in there but us. 3 of us, we hear the order up bell go, that little small little ring, hit the button on top, it ring.
Right.
We hear that go off, and we're like, did somebody come in the back door? And they're like, no, we would have heard the back door open and close. No, it wrong. It was actual ding.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh crap, that is creepy as hell.
Wow.
And I've seen like what best, lack of a better terminology, I'll put it like that, shadow people go from one end of the hallway to another in the
Yeah.
back section. I've seen shadow, again, lack of a better terminology, unexplained, what looked like people go from one pillar to the next and nobody walk around that pillar. So it could be a shadow person. I don't know. I could chalk it up to me being on my feet all day and just tired as hell and just like, no, it could have been anything. It just could have been my eyes playing tricks on me. Just tired. It does, because that has happened. You don't, if you, especially older, I'm not dismissing you and insulting you, Jay, but folks like us, when we get older, we have medical
Right.
problems. And me being, it's no secret that I'm a type 2 diabetic. And maybe if I don't eat enough, my sugar levels drop. I could be seeing something that it's a symptom. So
I've
who
gotten where
knows?
I forget names. Now it used to I remembered a lot, and now it's like names are going away as I get older. I forget names.
Right.
Hmm.
But I've seen a lot of stuff that cryptids, not so much. But weird, unverified lights in the sky, yes,
Hmm.
almost all the time. Do I know if they're planes or drones? Um,
I stood
idea,
on
but
the beach in Pensacola with Stanton Friedman. He was a nuclear physicist that studied and researched UFOs, wrote several books. But we were standing there, and this red light came up over the shore, over the ocean. It just jumped up into the air, hung there, flashed a couple of times. I looked at it through binoculars. He didn't have any. I looked at it through binoculars and noticed that it was one light, bright light, and then a dimmer light at like 1 o'clock. And it flashed several times, and then it dimmed out and seemed to drop away. And it wasn't a flare. It didn't act like a flare. Because a flare would have went up and continuously dropped. This just jumped up into the air and stopped. And we're both standing there and we're looking at it. And when it was over with, I turned to him and I'm like, well, what do you think it was? And he goes, I don't know. He says, and the thing is he really, he didn't care. And we talked about it. And he said, it could have been anything. And he said, it's a light in the sky. And he said, I don't study lights in the sky because they could be anything. It could have been an airplane, could have been a helicopter, could have been something that because of the distance, we didn't hear anything. And I've always kind of been that way myself with lights in the sky. If you see something at night and it has no, it's just a dot like a star or something like that, unless it moves in a very erratic way, which would not conform to aerodynamics. If it moves in a very erratic way, then to me it's UFO. But if you just see a light cross the sky, then it's not necessarily. I don't call it a UFO for the same reason that Stanton didn't. It's because it could have been anything. But yeah, I mean, that is really strange that you heard the bell get hit. That's
Right,
crazy. That is,
right. It's fun stuff. It's like could it be could have been a ghost? No idea. Could have been just something that fell on top of it.
mhm,
Yeah, there's that possibility. Again, this is my skeptical mind thinking that something could have dropped on it. It could have been a a, a bug landing on it. I know that's
right.
probably impossible, but you don't know. Um,
Exactly.
it, but it's that fun experience that
Exactly. But you have, like you said, you have this skeptical mind. You begin to run through your head every possibility of what it could be, you know? And I think a lot of people don't do that. They just accept. And it's good that you have that, that skeptical aspect of it, to always look at anything and ask yourself, what could have caused that? What could it be? And if you rule out everything else, then well, maybe it
yeah.
was a ghost.
I'll tell you this probably one last story before we go.
Uh-huh.
Same home as the voices I told you before. Um, my my bedroom was pretty much the room right next to the garage. I installed it myself. Me and my father helped install it because the garage door was set off to the side, and we
Mm-hmm.
split the garage down the center. Made my own little room in it, so I wasn't in
Mm-hmm.
a small little like spare bedroom or second bedroom. Um, and he put a like wall to wall desk because he knew how
Mm-hmm.
to. Uh, though by trade he would have been an electrician, but he knew construction as well. So
Right.
he put that like his spin of it on a desk, and I had a computer equipment, the whole 9 yards there. I got up for work, third shift, and I was just spending early days of Facebook's, getting caught up. I see a shadow on the wall, like right what I'll get into it later, right on the wall, like somebody was like looking right over the chair. I knew my mom was up visiting me, and she was probably my first thought was not this is a shadow person or this is my first thought was this is my mom telling me that I got to be come up for dinner or come up for your breakfast and you got to head to work. That was my headspace.
Uh,
And because I turned the chair around to tell her I know what time it is. I'm just getting up. I'll be right up to head on out. Turn around, nobody's there. I'm like, maybe it was my mom. Yeah, I'll go up to see where she is, and she turns out she was in bed asleep. I'm
wow.
like, there is no way. Now, this is somebody who is legally blind, had MS,
Uh-huh.
and chronic fatigue syndrome, and walked with a cane. So she wouldn't have been that fast to get all the way up the stairs and around. I'm like,
Yeah.
something is wrong here. Something's not right. The math is not mathing, as the kids might say.
Yeah.
I'm like, now it's like my next thought was like, I know I saw a shadow right there.
Uh-huh.
How big, or the way I went to the chair and I'm like, the person where the shadow was definitely, it looked female.
Uh-huh.
Um, I'll say it like that. To me, it looked female. That was the impression I got. That's why I thought it was my mom. Would have had to been about my height. I'm talking between maybe 5'7" to 5'10".
Mhm.
I was like, now I have no clue who this could have been because there's only two people in this house.
Right.
I'm like, but
And I could
again,
account for me.
I can't account for me. I know where my mom is right now.
Yeah.
And like now I'm just like, I don't know. I'm
Uh-huh.
running out. It's like there has to be a way to explain this, but I don't know.
Right.
And I
That's
just
it.
like
That's it.
whatever.
Say, I don't know. If you don't know, say, I don't know. Don't try to force it into some category. Don't try to write it off as, well, it must have been this. Well, maybe it was, but nothing
I
in
will
the
say
world wrong with saying, I don't know.
if it was a ghost, cool. If it was a spirit, shadow person, cool. But I could not explain what it was.
Yeah.
Either way, for definite. But
Yeah.
I will put this out there before, well, one last thing before we go. If you are watching this on YouTube, or if I put this up on Rumble, at some point, leave a comment down below of any tales of the paranormal, cryptids, or UFOs in the comment section down below, and hit that like button if you too have an open mind, or say, hey, your mind isn't closed
Mhm.
and
Yes.
you
And
have that open mind. Uh,
if you want to get in touch with me, I'm jmichael_official on Instagram. I'm jmichael on Facebook. I maintain a Twitter account and a Threads account. I don't use them that much. But those are the two places you can find me, and mostly on Instagram. If you go to my profile on Instagram and click on it, you'll see my link tree and you'll see other interviews I've done and links to my podcast, which is the J. Michael Show, and it's on YouTube as well. And in fact, as of recording this, I only have one episode up. I hope to have more episodes soon. So there's lots of ways you can get in touch with me.
and folks, I'll include Jay's link tree in our description and our both on audio aspect and our YouTube aspect. That way you could follow his link there. And if you're listening to us on the usual outlets, stay tuned after this for those links and where you could find us. But if you're watching on YouTube, those links will be in the description down below. And don't forget, as of April 2nd, Google Podcasts won't be a thing. Please see our descriptions for alternative outlets for that instead of Google. So, everyone, show Jay and his stuff, his social media, much love. No hate at all. Show him love. Share even when you visit his stuff. Share with him if you want your paranormal stuff or your UFO stuff, or share them with us and we could pass it along to him. That way there's some sort of buffer if you want to go that route. So take care, everybody. And Jay, do you have any last words?
I appreciate doing the show, and I think that we need to do another one because I think there's a lot of things we didn't cover,
Yeah.
and we could probably just talk all night. But yeah, let's do another one.
And I'm happy to have you on, and thank you so much for being on, Jay. And you're more than welcome to be
You're
on.
very
Just
welcome.
keep in touch with us. And as folks, you know the routine. I'm I'm the Reverend Godfather, aka the Martinsburg Man, and you know the rest. So let me do this.